My name is John Griffin. I'm from Dolby. We're the company that you're probably familiar with from cinema and broadcast and increasingly online now. So we're going to present some information about insights we've learned about HD experience going online. And we've asked one of our partners, Rovi, to participate. So Richard Bullwinkle, who you may have seen in the panel discussion earlier, the very animated discussion, will say a few words about their experience working with some OTT storefronts and how to improve the user experience. So I thought I'd start just showing a picture of an actual content creator. So everyone, I presume, here is generally in the business of delivering video online in some form or fashion. And I sometimes do with all the discussions about advertising and social layers on top of the experience. Sometimes it's easy to forget that actually the core of the business in terms of content creation is about creating a story, putting a compelling plot, a narrative, characters, impressive video, audio all together, and that's generally what consumers want. This gentleman is named Will Files. He works at Pixar, and it's someone that we work with off and on who in the audio process to help understand what vision they want to get across, what are the stories about, how audio plays a role, and of course ultimately video as well. And it's interesting, if you talk to folks like this, you see thousands and thousands and thousands of files of audio they use in the creation of a larger budget motion picture, like The Incredibles or Ratatouille, which is what he worked on. And it's amazing to think that when you're sitting in one of the post-production facilities, all that work and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment over a period of years is going into this, and ultimately it's going to be handed off to distributors, such as maybe some of the folks in this room, to transmit ultimately down to the consumer to enjoy. And so it's really great that they put so much effort at the front end into the content creation, and so it's really up to the industries, whether it's broadcast or online, or frankly even cinema, to do the best they can to transmit that and preserve that quality down to the consumer. So video and audio matter. That's the heart of how you experience content. There's interesting things you can do with interactivity and even now motion with some of the things they're working on in the cinema for motion chairs, but ultimately it's what you see and what you hear that imparts the story and the experience. So what's wrong with this picture? You see what looks to be a gourmet meal laid out, and for the drink, you see a bottle of Colt 45, which some of you may know is not necessarily the highest end beverage to pair with this. And so, obviously, if you go into a restaurant and they had a set chef tasting menu and they said, would you like our Colt 45 pairing with your filet mignon, you'd go, well, that's unusual, that's not right. And the waiter could say, well, no, the food is one thing, this is great food, and well, the drink's something totally different. What's the connection? And you as a consumer obviously know that there's an intricate link between what you eat and what you drink. It's all part of a singular experience that you have at a restaurant. And so likewise with consumers, when they perceive audio and video, there's different data points out that show consumers actually experience this as a singular experience, as opposed to carefully segmenting in their mind, well, this is what the video is all about, and that's what the audio is all about, and there's no connection. IDC, a market research firm, did some analysis of this and found the highest correlation with picture quality satisfaction is actually audio quality satisfaction. So folks that are impressed with video tend to be impressed with the audio, and vice versa. Nokia is presented in Europe at a broadcast seminar and showed results of a study they did that showed audio fidelity must be guaranteed for good subjective audiovisual experience. What they found was if the audio is terrible, generally consumers don't think the video is that great either. And small incremental increases in audio, given that it uses much less bandwidth than video, can make a big difference in the subjective experience. Finally, Vivo. Most folks in this room are probably familiar with Vivo. I believe they're number 1 or number 2 on YouTube for music videos. They serve millions and millions of videos all the time. The CEO of Vivo made a comment that actually they've done studies that show if you take poorly compressed video but pair it with great audio, overall consumers perceive the video to actually be better quality as well. And so if we get back to this meal concept, it's like, well, yes, I could serve you a great wine with maybe a meal that is not as compelling, but the wine itself would bring up your perception of the quality of the meal, and of course, vice versa. So when you think about HD entertainment in a multi-screen world, there's a lot of form factors out there. TV is the more traditional device that folks are sending content to, but now you have PCs, mobile devices, tablets, and there's a big challenge. If you think of the entire experience matters, both audio and video, you think of the investments going into the content creation up front, how can you as a distributor or someone serving this industry do your best to deliver that quality through to the consumer? So let's take a look at the living room first. So there's discussion about HD in the living room, and I think the easy takeaway for folks is the HD revolution has already happened. It's not happening now, it actually happened over the last decade. Digital broadcast started transmitting HD video in 1998. So if you think back, that's 14 years ago. It's forever in you consider how fast things move in the online market. Blu-ray, which is considered a quote-unquote new format, has actually been around since 2006. So we're 6 years in, so that's been out for a while as well. And what some folks may not realize is actually 1080p in surround sound for online video has been around with Vudu since 2008. So again, that's 4 years ago. So suffice it to say, consumers have an expectation of what happens in the living room. They have the equipment to take advantage of this, and so they fully expect it. HD TV is highly penetrated right now, roughly 70% of US households, but certainly if you look at the early and the mid adopters, stage technology adopters, it's even higher. I did a cursory check of Best Buy the other day online, and I think they had something like 460 some odd SKUs you could purchase. It turns out only 2 of them aren't 720p or above. So I think they had an 8-inch display that was supposed to be portable for picnics, and that was about it. So consumers are getting these displays high quality, even for low price televisions, even 20 inches or below. So HD is definitely here. Near and dear to our heart at Dolby, of course, is audio as well. And what we found is consumers care about audio. A CEA study done last year showed that roughly 1/3 of US consumers identify themselves as audio enthusiasts. This doesn't necessarily mean they're out buying esoteric tube amps and $10,000 speaker cables, but what they've indicated is we care about high quality audio as part of the experience. In terms of surround sound, integral to home theater, roughly 1/3 of US households report having an audio video receiver or some form of home theater system with surround sound. This is according to CEA, 32%. IDC has similar figures at 28%, so between the two, roughly 30%. Interestingly, this heavily skews to early to mid-stage technology adopters with consumers. So it's almost, if you'd identify yourself as an early adopter of technology, the chances are roughly 50% of the time you have surround sound in your living room. Mid-tier as well, very high. So this is the same demographic that is out buying new connected devices and using new online services. So it's an integral part. Soundbars, which many of you may be familiar with, really is an industry that has emerged with the explosive growth of flat panel displays. As displays get thinner and thinner and thinner, unfortunately sometimes audio quality gets worse and worse and worse. So even if you don't have the space for a full-fledged 5.1 or 7.1 channel surround system, soundbars, which have come down in price a lot over the years, are a great alternative, and generally speaking, most of these devices will take a multi-channel signal and render it for a consumer in the living room with surround sound. Penetration is lower than home theater, but it's a market that's growing rapidly. So online services that are going into the living room have realized that there's a clear paradigm in the consumer's mind of what that experience should be like. That's been well established with HD broadcast over the years, as well as Blu-ray. And so to meet those expectations, they've been delivering HD video and surround sound. So currently in the US, companies like Vudu, Netflix, HBO Go, Best Buy Cinema Now service, Amazon Instant Video, Apple iTunes, these all feature HD video and surround sound. One interesting takeaway, at least we learned working with both broadcast and online, is there was a lot of interest in both the ecosystems for improved video and improved audio. And as I mentioned, for video, HD Broadcast sent the first HD video broadcast back in 1998, so they had a clear head start over online. But for audio, more recently, it's actually an online service provider who beat broadcast, being the first to transmit 7.1 channel surround sound. Up until then, as has happened in last October, 7.1 was only used in Blu-ray and cinema. So it shows that the market clearly has changed. It's no longer necessarily broadcast setting standards in the industry and with consumers about what the quality of the experience can be like and what new features it can bring. So moving on to mobile. Mobile is a really interesting area in that the form factor was clearly not designed with the idea of HD entertainment in mind. Anyone who pulls out a cell phone notices something right up front that the screen is very small. So it's hard to fully replicate the experience of being in the theater or at home. However, consumers are increasingly using these devices for video consumption, and there's some interesting things going on where as they're using these devices more for consumption, their expectation of what that experience should be is increasing. So you see there's high resolution displays going on these devices, increasing processing power, and certainly there's audio issues with these devices, given the small form factor and what you can do with those speakers. So first, HD video. I think most folks years ago would have assumed HD video, great for the living room, maybe not so relevant for mobile. Sure, it's a small screen, small device. There's a few things that are going on in the market, I think, that are really starting to change what consumers expect. So one, remember the screens are small, but the viewing distance is close. So while your 47-inch TV is much bigger, you tend to sit much farther back. Looking closer at an iPad, actually, the view ratio is more comparable. Also look at what companies like Apple are doing, the Retina display marketing. Consumers are now being taught to expect to not see any pixels. The experience should be razor crisp and very elegant. So consumers, as they're using games, other applications, are beginning to have an expectation that the video should look good as well. And let's not forget that many of these devices are enabling 1080p video recording for your own content. So if I'm out recording my kids in 1080p at a soccer game, and then I go to buy a $5 movie download, it would be really frustrating to find out that actually my kid in the soccer game looks higher quality or higher resolution than the movie I just purchased. So something definitely to keep in mind as you're going to the smaller screen. For audio, at least from our perspective at Dolby, we think there's actually a key advantage with audio video in that with headphones, you have an ideal scenario to actually deliver a really compelling experience, even on a mobile device. And it just so happens, of course, we all have 2 ears, and you hear the world spatially. So what happens is as audio goes through a room, the physical aspects of your body actually imprint a sonic signature on that audio, so you understand spatially where it's located. Likewise, with headphones over your ears, you can do a very similar process with audio processing technology and provide a very immersive, compelling, big room experience, even on a small device. And so there's a number of phone and tablet manufacturers looking at this, and it's a great way to impart a really cinematic experience, even on a device that is not traditionally considered a great media playback device. Speakers present a bit of a different challenge. All of you, I'm sure, are familiar with going into a movie theater, watching an action movie or maybe a horror film, and have someone whispering on screen, and the room seems to get very quiet. And then suddenly, there's a loud sound, an explosion, something crashes, someone jumps out and screams, and you literally almost jump up. Part of the reason you do that is actually the difference between the quietest sounds in the film and the loudest sounds. And that's a very important tool, particularly used for movies, that recording mixers, such as Will Files I showed in the beginning, use to impart impact in the experience, tell the story, make it a really compelling experience. In a movie theater, works great. At home, generally works great. Try that on a mobile device with very limited loudness output, and you have a major issue. The issue is, when you turn the volume all the way up, you may be able to hear some of the explosions or loud elements, but dialogue or other elements in the mix are so much quieter, you barely can hear it. And so for folks who have downloaded movies traditionally on devices like an iPad, you may have noticed this, that particularly dialogue can be hard to hear. You're not hearing all the elements you need to. So the dynamic range, in particular, as you play over mobile speakers, is something that needs to be compensated. But compensated in a very intelligent way so that the original intent of the content creator is not destroyed. You don't want to put it through, for example, a hardcore automatic gain compressor used in something like a radio station. Finally, mobile devices, and we've heard some comments on this at the session this morning for the panelists. Mobile devices are increasingly be able to connect directly to a larger system, whether it's an HDTV and or a home theater system. In the early days, this was generally done with an HDMI cable, and so for a consumer, it was a little more cumbersome to put the cable into the device, wire it up, and get it working. But particularly with things like Apple AirPlay, now it's becoming really elegant and simple for a consumer to simply take what they have on a mobile device, tablet or smartphone, and throw it up on the big screen. So I'm sure you've heard, Apple's actually supporting 1080p today with AirPlay, and for some folks, they may not realize actually surround sound is supported as well. So today, if you download a movie on an iPad and you decide you want to, start watching it, perhaps while you're on a plane traveling, get home, throw it up on the big screen, you can get HD video as well as full surround sound. That is all preserved in the download. So folks that are sending content to mobile devices need to think of the broader use case of that device, not simply what's going to be played back locally. So I mentioned earlier, for HD in the living room, largely speaking, the paradigm has been set on what an HD experience is. Consumers generally know the lingo of things like 1080p, 5.1 surround sound. It's common knowledge that that's what the experience should be, and that's what you have to do to be competitive. Mobile is really interesting in that I don't think a paradigm has been fully set yet. We've seen signals in the market that service providers, device makers, and consumers are interested in a better experience, but there's a lot of room for innovation in how you do this, both with video, audio, and of course, some of the topics we discussed earlier in terms of interactivity with social networking and things of that nature. So in summary, consumers, quality matters, consumer demand, and HD experience. Remember, I showed Will Files in the beginning, hundreds of millions of dollars of production going into content, like movies from Pixar. It's a real shame, of course, if that goes through a distribution channel and gets mangled, so preserving that, delivering that to consumers is important. For services into the living room, consumers have a clear expectation of HD video and surround sound. The leading services are doing it. In many ways, that's just table stakes to be competitive with premium content. Mobile in particular, though, I think for folks in this room is an interesting area as well because it's ripe for an HD revolution. And as I mentioned with the example of Vudu, if we wind the clock back 10 years ago, for quality and in the HD experience, generally it was folks in optical disc or HD broadcast distribution that were setting standards and defining that experience. I think a lot of the companies that are at a conference like this are in an ideal position to define this for mobile right now and really take the lead. So with that, I'm going to hand off to Richard, who will speak a bit about some of the experience Roby's had working with storefronts on a compelling HD or a compelling experience. Thanks, Richard.
There are lots of chairs if you guys want to take a second to sit down instead of standing, because God knows I'm boring. And if you expected this to be one of my usual rants, like you might have seen earlier, I'm a guest, so I'm going to be on my better behavior. When the kind folks at Adobe approached me and said, could you just talk a little bit about the experience of creating an online store, I was really happy to do it, but I was in a bit of a whiny mood. So I created a presentation about why it's really hard to create an online store. I'm going to try to divert that into a positive talk as I go through this. It's a very quick talk. In case you don't know, Roby, I work for Roby, we provide a white label store that a lot of people use. We provide the store to Best Buy, that is Cinema Now. We run that for them, we take the transactions, we license the content, we do a lot of things. We do that for Dixon's in the UK, we do that for MediaMarkt in Germany. We do that across the globe for a lot of people. Why are retail stores coming to us for an online store? Well, it used to be that consumers came into those stores every few weeks, browsed through the Blu-ray discs, and figured out what they wanted to buy. That's a great experience for you. So you flip through the disc, find something you want, and leave. In fact, it was a great driver for those brick and mortar stores because those customers would also browse around the store and say, oh look, there's a new camera out that I like, or there's a new TV out, maybe we should think about that. And so that was the way that they drove a lot of traffic, was with DVD sales. As consumers started getting the ability to shop for content on the couch and buy online content, those retail stores noticed a significant decline in the number of people coming in. So how do you maintain a connection to your consumer when they no longer come in the store? That's where we came in. We provide this white label store that is branded, heavily branded with their marketing, but also it allows them the opportunity to present ads and say, these are some of the new products that we have in the store if you want to come in. But they still maintain a weekly relationship with the consumer who buys movies from through our white label store of the brand that they're used to. Best Buy, today we do Blockbuster. We've done a lot over the years. So anyway, that was a long time for an introduction slide, wasn't it? So the things that make a home experience great are the things that you would expect. This was true when there was DVDs, and there was true when there were Blu-rays. There has to be a compelling story that makes somebody want to get the movie. There has to be a great experience. And you know, John talked about standards, but really, it doesn't matter to me if it's a standard or if it's a company's particular technology. Dolby is technically not a standard. You have to go license Dolby from Dolby Laboratories if you want to put it into your device and into your movie. Both people pay in that transaction usually. But you wouldn't want to watch a movie without some sort of great sound, and Dolby happens to be the name of sound. So when we talk about standards, it could be HDMI, it could be DLNA, it could be a lot of things. Dolby happens to have one of the unique opportunities because they're a branded standard that is unique for consumers. So we, of course, support Dolby in all of our storefronts, and we support a lot of other things too, and I'll talk a little bit about that, because when you move to digital distribution, you still want an immersive experience, you still want ease of use, but now consumers are in a weird stage where they're not quite sure why it's not as easy as it was with a DVD. You may not have realized as a consumer that DVD usually came out 6 months after theatrical release, and it went into a lot of other distributions along the way to DVD. But when you talk about digital, you certainly understand, because you see a commercial for a movie on TV, you're really interested in that movie, and you go to try to find it online, and it's not there. And you wait, and you try again 6 weeks later, it's still not there. And you try again 6 weeks later, and it may be available in somebody's service, but it's not available in the service you like. Maybe that's Netflix, or maybe that's any of the services. But there's windowing, and so that gets very weird for consumers. There are also social barriers. We spent a lot of time talking to consumers about how they think about their content. And the fact is, consumers value that shelf in their living room as a piece of themselves. Here's a shelf that says, this is who I am. Here are the movies I own, here are the books I've read. And by the way, how many people have 2 shelves? I have a shelf back in my bedroom that is filled with things I would never want people to know I watched or read. And it's, there's tech journals back there, there's 15 books with different animals on them from the series of tech, learning how to program C and stuff. I don't want anybody to know I program C, but I have every Vonnegut book you've ever heard of on a shelf out in the living room. I want people to think I read a lot of Vonnegut. I've read about 3. It's a social aspect. So physical media has a social meaning to it. So how do you get someone who has a huge DVD collection to buy digital content? You have to make it a better experience. Step 1 is they don't have to get off the couch. So I might buy or rent digital content if I just get to stay on my couch and not have to go to a store. Obviously that's working. Try to find a Blockbuster in this neighborhood. There used to be one on every corner, now there's probably 3 in Silicon Valley. The lack of interoperability between devices. I can buy a movie on my big screen TV in my living room, and maybe it's connected to a Roku, maybe it's connected to an Apple, maybe it's connected to a service built into the TV. A lot of TVs have services built in. And then I try to bring that same content to my portable device, and it's hell. For example, if I buy a beautiful Vudu movie, which has high-def video and it has 7.1 surround, try to get that on an Apple device. It's a little tricky. You actually can do it. They've just started doing it, but they're going completely around the Apple's ecosystem. They're just doing it through a browser. You go to the Vudu site with a browser and you can watch it there. And we're thinking about similar things, by the way. We have the exact same challenges. We develop and deploy a lot of digital video to a whole lot of devices. Xbox, we sell a lot of movies on Xbox. We sell a lot of movies on PlayStation. But we can't sell a single movie on Apple's device because Apple wants 30% And guess what? We don't make 30% of the total purchase. So it's very difficult when you get into an ecosystem environment. Saturation of content. How do you sell somebody a movie for $19.99 when it's called Zookeeper and there's 50 movies just like it? And you know, when you went, the movie industry always likes to tell us about how technology is killing their business. Really, saturation is killing their business. When there was a movie like Gone with the Wind, and it was an event, and you went and sat in the theater for 4 hours and watched Gone with the Wind, everybody who had the money went and did that. But there have been 50 movies just like Gone with the Wind since, and you don't need to line up to see every one of them. Some of them will appeal to you, some of them the timing will be right, but when you have a saturation of content, it's very hard to get a consumer convinced that this, we were just talking at lunch about this movie, John Carter, which looks to be an interesting movie, high production, great marketing, appeals to everything that my family would like. It never even came up in discussion. We just never talked about should we go. So it's not that it's a bad movie, it's just we've seen a lot of movies. We saw Avatar, we saw Dances with Wolves before that. They're all the same movie. It's just, are we ready to see another one? So saturation of content is, I'm sure, something that Disney loved that I just said. They're all the same movie. The last one is the really ugly one. Consumers have little confidence that their digital content will remain of value. So if you spend $20 for a movie, how many remember MovieLink? Anybody ever buy something from MovieLink? Where's that content? MovieLink's gone. I bought content from the original Apple ecosystem that no longer actually plays. Not many people know this, but they've changed their format twice. And they actually changed their DRM. And some of that content, they just give it to me in the new format, which is great, very nice of them. And they happen to be a giant company who can do that. But a lot of the littler companies converting to every new device that comes out. Yes, a lot of the new phones this year will have HD displays. But if I bought content from the Samsung store last year, is it going to be upgraded to HD content for me this year so it works on my new phone? Probably not. It'll still be an SD and it'll look grainy and weird on my new phone, which has a high screen. So how do you have consumer value in digital content? That's one of the things that, I'm going to say a word that every time I say it, somebody throws up, so if you're going to do it, there's buckets. But ultraviolet. Ultraviolet was designed to be an experience that really gave consumers a great experience, a great value for their content. And we all sat down and said, well, we want the same experience where if I have a DVD, I put it on my shelf, and 20 years later I can pick that DVD up and play it, it works on almost every device I have in the home. We wanted the same experience for digital content. Does anybody know how long you're guaranteed to be able to watch a movie that you buy in ultraviolet? Nobody knows? 1 year. So if you buy a piece of ultraviolet content, you are guaranteed 1 year that it will still be available to you after the original purchase. It may be available after that if the store chooses to give you that opportunity, and they may also charge you more money for each subsequent download after 1 year. For 1 year after purchase, it's free as many times as you want to watch it. After that 1 year, you may have to pay. Some stores will give it to you for free. We give it to you. We're an ultraviolet store. We will give it to you as many times as you want during the life of us, which hopefully is forever. But that's all ultraviolet gives you, is a year. Is that really a great consumer experience compared to physical media? Is that really what consumers want? Is that going to convince a consumer to buy a new release title? I don't think so. So some of the things that we really fret about is how do we raise that value. So give the user a choice of format automatically based on devices, use standards when possible. That's so obvious, but we develop stores that will ship to you in Windows Media, in Flash, in H.264 with wideband DRM. We own DivX. I don't know if you've ever heard of DivX, but it's on over 500 million devices. So every Samsung portable device made in the last 5 years is DivX certified. Every LG device made in the last 5 years is DivX certified. Every, I could go on. There's tons and tons of devices. It's an ingredient brand. You don't even have to know it's there. If you happen to go to one of the stores that we support, or other stores that support DivX, it just plays. These are certified devices. The content plays. You get a great experience. You get great sound. You get great video, and a great trick play. Believe it or not, fast forward and rewind. People get really frustrated when it doesn't work, and it's hard to do over an internet connection. So one of the things we work on. A modern adaptive streaming format. So what happens when you're watching a piece of content on your tablet, your home, on your Wi-Fi, and then you go outside and you want to go on the back porch? It has to be created in such a way that the consumer still thinks they've got an excellent entertainment experience, but we're using much less bandwidth. So modern adaptive streaming formats do that. DivX Plus Streaming does that, but a lot of people have done it. But that's one of the things that we're doing, so the consumer doesn't have to worry about, do I have enough connectivity to watch this movie? We gracefully degrade so that you may notice a slight picture degradation. By the way, you never degrade audio. Never. You don't do it. If you switch somebody from an excellent audio experience to a low quality audio experience, they notice it instantly. If you take a picture from 1080p to 720p, 80% of consumers can't tell the difference. So don't degrade audio. Promise access to the content for long periods of time. We've done that. Some people are talking about doing it, but it's one of the things we have to do if we want consumers to really enjoy digital content, is give them access to it for a very long period of time. So just like those DVDs that are on the shelf, they know that the content will be available to them if they buy new devices. If they build a big content library. Let's say you buy 100 movies, which is what the studios want. Will those 100 movies be available to me 10 years from now on whatever device I might own? And I have no idea what devices those will be. So those are some of the things that I was thinking about when I was in my whiny state. I think we're doing Q&A now. Is that sort of the plan? Great.
Yeah, thanks, Richard.